20 below, and the wind had teeth. Marina Thornhill pushed open the barn door, frozen hinges screaming in the dark. Her breath fogged in the lantern light. The smell of horse sweat and grain dust hung heavy in the cold air. Then she saw them. 2 little boys, maybe 8 years old, crouched by the feed bins. One clutched a burlap sack of oats. The other had shoved grain into his coat pockets, hand shaking so bad he kept dropping it. They froze when the light hit their faces. Dirt smudged their dark brown cheeks. Their lips were cracked and bleeding from the cold. The taller one, tight black curls poking out from under a torn cap, stepped in front of his brother. His voice came out barely a whisper. "Please don't tell Uncle Silas. He said if we eat his food again, he'll put us on the orphan train." The smaller boy swayed. His eyes rolled back. He hit the ground before Marina could move. Outside, hoofbeats crunched through the snow. Marina dropped the lantern hook and lunged forward. She caught the little one before his head cracked against the frozen dirt. He weighed nothing, just bones and threadbare cotton. "Jasper!" The other boy fell to his knees beside them. "Jasper, wake up!" He's breathing. Marina pressed her palm to the child's forehead, cold as creek ice. "When's he last eat?" 3 days. The boy's voice broke. "Uncle said we didn't earn supper. Said we were thieves." Marina looked at the burlap sack. "Horse feed." They'd been eating horse feed. "Get up." She shifted the unconscious child into her arms. "Both of you inside now, but Uncle ain't here yet." Marina's boots crunched across the frozen ground toward the house. "Move." The boy hesitated, then grabbed the grain sack and followed. Inside, the fire had burned down to coals. Marina laid the little one on the worn sofa near the hearth and threw 2 logs onto the embers. Smoke curled up, then flames caught. The smell of pine sap filled the room. "What's your name?" She pulled a wool blanket from the back of a chair. "Elijah." He was staring at his brother, hands twisting in that expensive scarf around his neck. Didn't match the rest of him. That scarf had silver thread worked into the edges. Cost more than these boys should have had. "He's Jasper. We're twins." "I can see that." Marina tucked the blanket around Jasper. His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. "Elijah, there's milk in the cold box. Bread in the tin on the counter. Get it." He didn't move. "I ain't going to hurt you." She met his eyes. Brown eyes. Too old for 8 years. "But your brother needs food. Real food, not horse grain." Elijah's chin trembled. Then he ran for the kitchen. Marina knelt beside the sofa. Jasper's breathing was shallow. His hands were red and raw from the cold. Frostbite starting on the fingertips. 5 years ago she'd knelt like this beside another small body. Her daughter, 3 years old, born too early, lungs too weak. Samuel had held the baby for 6 hours before she stopped breathing. He'd followed her 2 weeks later. Heart gave out from the grief, the doctor said. Marina's hands remembered. Remembered warming cold skin. Remembered praying to a God who didn't answer. She shook her head. "Not now." Elijah returned with a tin cup of milk and half a loaf. His hand shook so bad the milk sloshed over the rim. "Give it here." Marina took the cup and lifted Jasper's head. "Jasper, wake up now. You got a drink?" The boy's eyes opened, unfocused, glassy. "That's it." She tipped the cup to his lips. "Slow. Don't gulp." He drank like he was drowning. Milk ran down his chin. When the cup was empty, he started crying. Silent, shaking sobs that made no sound. "Sure." Marina didn't know what else to do, so she broke off a piece of bread and handed it to him. "Easy, your stomach ain't used to it." Elijah had already eaten half the loaf. He saw her looking and froze, guilt written across his face. "Finish it, Marina said. There's more. There is? Yeah. She stood and moved to the window. Through the frost on the glass, she could see a rider coming up the road, lantern swinging, moving fast. That your uncle? Elijah's face went white. He'll be angry. He said we stole from him. He said? His voice dropped to a whisper. He killed Papa. Elijah's hands were shaking again. I heard him tell someone. He pushed Papa off the cliff and made it look like an accident. Marina's blood went cold. You sure about that? I'm sure. Elijah's voice cracked. And now he wants to put us on the orphan train so we can't tell anyone. The hoofbeat stopped outside. Boots hit the porch. 3 sharp knocks on the door. Thornhill. A man's voice. Deep, authoritative. It's Sheriff Reeves. Open up. Not the uncle. The law. Marina looked at the 2 boys on her sofa. Jasper was still crying silently, clutching the bread like it might disappear. Elijah had moved in front of his brother again, small shoulders squared. She thought about Samuel, about the baby they'd lost, about 5 years of eating Christmas dinner alone at this table. About how some things are worth more than staying out of trouble. Stay here, she told the boys. Don't say nothing unless I tell you to. She opened the door. Sheriff Marcus Reeves stood on the porch, snow dusting his hat. Behind him, the wind howled through the bare cottonwoods. He held up a folded paper, candlelight catching the blood-red wax seal. Got a problem, Thornhill? The sheriff's face was grim. You're harboring wards of Vernon Calloway, and he's coming to collect what's his in 3 days. Marina didn't step aside. They're children, Marcus. Starving children. They're legal wards. The sheriff shifted his weight, his breath fogged in the cold. Vernon filed guardianship papers 2 weeks ago. Judge Pritchard signed them. Judge Pritchard. Marina spat the name like it tasted bad. The same judge who plays poker with Vernon every Thursday. Don't matter who he plays cards with. Papers are legal. Marcus pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his graying hair. Look, I don't like it either, but the law says bloodkin has first claim. And Vernon is their uncle. Their uncle, who hasn't fed them in 3 days. You got proof of that? Marina stepped back and gestured at the sofa. Elijah had wrapped himself around Jasper, both of them watching with wide, terrified eyes. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd seen plenty in 30 years as sheriff, but the sight of those 2 boys, hollow-cheeked, dirt-smudged, trembling, hit him like a fist. Hell, he looked away. When's the last time they ate? They were stealing horse feed when I found them, Marina said quietly. Horse feed? Marcus was silent for a long moment. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. The smell of wood smoke and warm bread filled the space between them. I'll talk to Vernon, Marcus finally said. But Thornhill, you can't keep them. Not without his permission. 3 days. That's all I can give you. He turned and walked back into the snow. Marina closed the door and leaned against it. Elijah was still staring at her. Are you going to make us go back? His voice was barely audible. Not tonight. She moved to the fire and added another log. Sparks flew up the chimney. Tonight you sleep somewhere warm. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. But tomorrow came faster than she wanted. By mid-morning, half of the town knew. Marina could feel it when she rode into Clearwater Ridge with the boys bundled in the wagon bed under blankets. Eyes followed them down the muddy street. Whispers carried on the cold wind. She pulled up outside Nora Patterson's general store. The building leaned slightly to the left, whitewashed boards weathered gray. Bell above the door jangled when she pushed it open. Nora looked up from her ledger, wire-rimmed spectacles perched on her nose. 50-some, grey streaking through her dark hair, hand-stained with ink. She'd run this store alone since her husband died 10 years back. Marina. Her eyes flicked to the boys behind her. Heard you had company. Need some clothes and boots. She nodded at Elijah and Jasper. They were still wearing thin shirts and patched trousers, no coats. Jasper's feet were wrapped in rags. Whatever you got, that'll fit. Nora came around the counter. She knelt in front of the boys, studying them with the careful eye of a woman who'd raised 4 children before burying 2. You're the Washington twins. It wasn't a question. I remember your mother. She used to buy fabric here. Had beautiful handwriting. Elijah's hand went to his scarf. You knew Mama. I did. Nora stood and moved to a shelf stacked with folded clothes. She was kind and she loved you boys more than anything. She died when we were born, Jasper whispered. It was the first time Marina had heard him speak. His voice was soft, like he was afraid of breaking something. I know, honey. Nora pulled down 2 coats, heavy wool, dark brown. But that don't mean she stopped loving you. The bell jangled again. Cold air rushed in. Vernon Calloway filled the doorway. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, wearing a wool coat that cost more than most men in Clearwater Ridge made in a month. His face was clean-shaven, handsome in a hard way. Banker's hand smooth and uncalloused, and on his finger, a gold ring with a blood-red stone. Behind him stood 2 men Marina didn't recognize. Hired muscle by the look of them, guns on their hips. Miss Thornhill, Vernon's voice was smooth as whiskey. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Elijah grabbed Marina's arm, his fingernails dug in through her coat sleeve. These boys don't belong to anybody, Marina said evenly. They're children, not property. Legally, they're my wards. Vernon pulled a folded document from his coat. The same blood-red wax seal Marina had seen on the sheriff's papers. Signed by Judge Pritchard, witnessed by 2 upstanding citizens of this town. Upstanding. Nora's voice was sharp. That what we're calling your poker buddies now? Vernon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Patterson, always a pleasure. He unfolded the document and held it up. Guardianship papers, legal and binding. The boys come with me today. No. Jasper's voice was small but clear. He stepped forward, past Marina, past Elijah. You killed Papa. I heard you. The store went dead silent. Vernon's smile never wavered. Children have such active imaginations. Your father fell from a cliff, sweetheart. A tragic accident. I mourned him deeply. You pushed him. Jasper's hands were shaking, but he didn't back down. I heard you telling someone. You said he shouldn't have tried to change the claim papers. For just a second, something flickered across Vernon's face. Anger, fear, then it was gone. Smoothed over like he'd never felt anything at all. The boy is confused. Grief does that. He looked at Marina. I'll be back tomorrow with the sheriff and you'll hand them over or you'll be arrested for kidnapping. He turned and walked out. His hired men followed. The bell jangled one last time. Then silent except for the wind outside and the crackling of the wood stove in the corner. Nora was staring at Jasper. Claim papers? What claim papers? I don't know. Jasper looked up at Marina, tears streaming down his face. I just know Papa was angry about something Uncle Vernon wanted him to sign. And then Papa died. Marina felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear. Something harder. She looked at Nora. You knew their mother. Did she leave a will? If she did, it would be filed at the county seat. Or, Nora paused. Father Tobias was here when she died. He might have kept church records. Where's Tobias now? Circuit preacher could be anywhere between here and Fort Laramie. Nora crossed her arms. But Marina, even if you find a will, Vernon has Judge Pritchard in his pocket. Legal or not, he'll get those boys unless. The door opened again. Father Tobias stepped inside, snow dusting his black coat. Unless someone fights him, the priest said quietly. And I believe that's exactly what we're going to do. Father Tobias Kane shook the snow from his shoulders and closed the door. He was older than Marina remembered, maybe 60 now, with silver threading through his dark hair. His face was weathered from years riding circuit through Wyoming territory, but his eyes were sharp. I heard about the boys. He moved to the wood stove and held his hands over it. The smell of wet wool and horse sweat came off him in waves. Rode through the night when Sheriff Reeves told me. You know Vernon has legal papers, Marina said. I know a lot of things about Vernon Calloway. Tobias turned to face them. Including the fact that those guardianship papers are a lie. Elijah's head snapped up. You can prove it. Not yet. The priest pulled off his gloves, fingers red from the cold. But I baptized your mother, child. Teresa Grace Washington. I remember her handwriting, her voice, the way she prayed. He looked at Jasper. You have her eyes. Jasper touched his face like he could feel his mother there. Teresa registered her will with the church in 1884, Tobias continued. Not with the county. She didn't trust the local judge. Said he was in too many pockets. Smart woman. He paused. If that will still exists, it might name a guardian for you boys. Someone other than Vernon. Where would it be? Nora asked. County seat. St. Benedict's Parish, 80 miles north. Tobias's jaw tightened. I need to ride there and search the records, but in this weather it'll take 2 weeks, maybe more. Vernon is coming back tomorrow, Marina said flatly. Then we buy time. Tobias looked at her. You're willing to keep them, even if it means trouble. Marina thought about the empty house she'd been living in for 5 years, about Samuel's chair by the fire that nobody sat in anymore, about the sound of children's voices filling rooms that had been too quiet for too long. Yeah, she said. I'm willing. Good. Tobias nodded. Then I ride at first light. You keep them safe until I get back. And if Vernon shows up with the sheriff, tell Marcus Reeves that you're contesting the guardianship on grounds of suspected fraud and child endangerment. It won't hold long, but it might hold long enough. Nora cleared her throat. Those boys need proper clothes and hot meals. I'll extend credit, Marina. Pay me when you can. I can't. You can and you will. She was already wrapping the wool coats in brown paper. And if Vernon Calloway has a problem with it, he can take it up with me. Outside, boots thumped on the porch. The door swung open. Sheriff Reeves stood there, hat in hand. Behind him, the street was filling with townspeople. Word had spread fast. Need to talk to you, Thornhill. Marcus's voice was careful. Outside. Marina glanced at the boys. Elijah had moved close to Father Tobias, one hand clutching his coat sleeve. Jasper stood very still, watching everything with those old eyes. Stay here, Marina told them. Then to Tobias, don't let them out of your sight. On the porch, the wind bit through Marina's shirt. She could see faces in the crowd. Some sympathetic, some hard. Mrs. Chen from the boarding house, Tom Blake, who ran the livery, Sarah Winters, the school teacher, all watching. Vernon filed a formal complaint, Marcus said quietly. Claims you took the boys without permission. Says they're confused about their father's death. Grief talking. Judge Pritchard wants them returned to their legal guardian by sundown tomorrow. Their legal guardian is trying to starve them. So you say? Marcus held up a hand before Marina could argue. I believe you. I do. But belief ain't evidence. And Vernon has papers. You got anything besides 2 scared little boys saying things that sound like nightmares? Marina was quiet for a moment. In the general store window, she could see Elijah and Jasper standing close together. Tobias's hand rested on Elijah's shoulder. Father Tobias is riding to the county seat. There might be a will, one that names a different guardian. Marcus's eyebrows went up. Might be. It's something. It's a maybe. And Vernon has a signed document from a territorial judge. The sheriff put his hat back on. I'm giving you till Sunday. That's 3 days. If Tobias don't come back with proof, I got no choice but to enforce the judge's order. And if Vernon comes for them before then, you better hope you got a good reason to say no. Marcus started down the steps, then stopped. Marina, be careful. Vernon Calloway don't play fair, and he's got resources you don't. The sheriff walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Marina went back inside. The warmth of the store hit her like a wall. Jasper and Elijah were still standing by Tobias, but now Nora had given them each a piece of hard candy. Jasper was turning his over in his hand, not eating it, just looking at it like he wasn't sure it was real. Sunday, Tobias said. It wasn't a question. Sunday, Marina confirmed. The priest nodded slowly. Then we pray I find what we need. He knelt in front of the boys, eye level with them. I'm going to be gone for a little while, but Miss Thornhill is going to keep you safe. You understand? Elijah nodded. Jasper just stared at him. Good. Tobias stood. There's one more thing. Before I go, I'd like to do what your mother would have wanted. He pulled a small wrapped loaf from his saddlebag. The smell of fresh baked bread filled the store. A blessing, the way she used to do it. He broke the bread carefully, steam rising in the cold air. Then he began to pray. Jasper's lips moved, whispering something. Tobias stopped mid-prayer. He stared at him. What did you say, child? Jasper looked up, eyes wide. It's Mama's prayer. The one she taught us before she died. That's what you're saying. Tobias's hands trembled. Say it with me. And Jasper did, word for word. His small voice joined Tobias's, reciting a prayer the priest hadn't heard in 9 years. When they finished, Tobias crossed himself. I baptized your mother, he said softly. And I remember that prayer. She wrote it in the church ledger herself. He looked at Marina. If she wrote that prayer, she wrote other things, too. A will. I'm sure of it now. He turned and walked out into the snow. The days that followed fell into a rhythm Marina hadn't known in 5 years. Morning started before dawn. She'd wake to find Elijah already dressed, standing by the window, watching for the sun. Jasper took longer, curling deeper into the blankets like he was afraid the warmth would disappear. She taught them the work, not because she needed the help, but because idle hands gave fear too much room to grow. Ice don't break itself, she told them that first morning, handing Elijah the iron mallet. You got to show up every day, no matter how cold it gets. The water troughs had frozen solid overnight. 20 below, maybe colder. The kind of cold that made your teeth ache and turned breath to ice crystals in the air. Elijah swung the mallet. It bounced off the ice with a dull thunk. He tried again and again. His arms shook from the effort. Let me and Marina took the mallet and brought it down hard. The ice cracked. Once more and chunks broke free, revealing dark water beneath. See, you keep hitting the same spot, eventually it breaks. What if it don't? Jasper asked quietly. He was watching from the barn door wrapped in one of Samuel's old coats. Then you keep swinging. Marina handed the mallet back to Elijah. Because if the cattle can't drink, they die. And if the cattle die, we don't eat. That's ranch work. You show up even when it's hard. Elijah nodded slowly. He took the mallet and swung again. This time a small crack appeared. That's it. Marina moved to the next trough. Every morning, you and me. Deal. Deal, Elijah said. By the third morning, both boys were swinging the mallet. Jasper was smaller, weaker, but he didn't quit, just kept hitting until the ice broke. Marina watched them and felt something in her chest loosen, something that had been frozen for 5 years. At night, they sat by the fire. She taught Jasper to braid rope, showed Elijah how to read weather in the sky. Neither boy talked much about their father or their uncle, but sometimes late, when they thought she was asleep, she'd hear them whispering to each other in the dark. "You think Papa knows we're safe now?" Jasper once asked. "I think so," Elijah whispered back. "I think Mama knows, too." Sunday came too fast. Marina was in the barn checking a loose hinge on the feed room door when she heard hoofbeats. Multiple horses moving fast. She grabbed her rifle from the peg by the door and stepped outside. Vernon Calloway sat astride a black gelding, expensive saddle gleaming even in the winter light. Behind him, 4 men. Not the 2 hired guns from before, for new faces, hard men with rifles across their saddles. And behind them, Sheriff Reeves, face grim. Thornhill. Vernon dismounted slowly, brushing dust from his coat. The smell of pomade and cigar smoke came off him. "I believe we had an agreement. 3 days and here we are." "Father Tobias ain't back yet," Marina said evenly. "That's unfortunate." Vernon pulled a paper from his coat. "Not the guardianship document, something else. But I'm afraid your time is up. You see, I did some looking into your situation, and I discovered something interesting." He unfolded the paper. Red wax seal at the bottom. "Fresh. You owe $800 on this ranch. Mortgage taken out 6 years ago, payments current until last month." Vernon smiled. "But last month, you missed. And this month, that makes you 60 days delinquent." Marina's blood went cold. "I bought your note from the bank on Friday," Vernon continued. "Paid full value for it, which means I now hold your mortgage, and according to territorial law, I can call the loan due immediately if the borrower is in arrears." He held up another document. This one had Judge Pritchard's signature. "Foreclosure notice signed yesterday. You have 30 days to pay the full amount, $800, or this property becomes mine." Vernon's smile widened. "Of course, I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to forgive the debt entirely in exchange for one small thing." "The boys," Marina said flatly. "The boys." Vernon folded the papers carefully. "They're my blood kin, Thornhill, and you're nobody. A broke rancher about to lose everything. So here's my offer. Give me Elijah and Jasper right now and I'll tear up this foreclosure notice. You keep your land, your home, everything." The hired men shifted in their saddles, hands resting near rifle stocks. Sheriff Reeves cleared his throat. "Marina, I looked at the papers. They're legal. He can do this." "Of course, I can." Vernon's voice was smooth as silk. "And if you refuse, I'll be back in 30 days with a writ of possession. You'll be dragged off this land, and the boys will still come to me because I'm their legal guardian. The only difference is you'll have nothing." From the house, Marina heard the door creak open. She didn't turn around, but she knew Elijah and Jasper were watching. "So, what's it going to be, Thornhill?" Vernon stepped closer. "Your pride or your land? Choose." The wind howled through the bare cottonwoods. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. The sound echoed across the frozen fields. Marina thought about Samuel, about the day they'd bought this land, how he'd stood right here on this spot, and said, "This is where we'll build our life." She thought about the baby they'd buried in the spring, the tiny grave under the oak tree, marked with a wooden cross Samuel had carved himself. This land was all she had left of them. But then she looked at Elijah and Jasper standing in the doorway, thin shoulders squared, holding each other's hands. And she knew some things were worth more than land. "No," Marina said quietly. Vernon's smile vanished. "What?" "I said no." Marina lowered the rifle, but she didn't put it down. "You can have the land. Take it. But you ain't getting those boys. You're making a mistake." "Maybe." Marina met his eyes. "But it's mine to make." For a long moment, Vernon just stared at her. Then he laughed. A cold, hard sound that had nothing to do with humor. "You're a fool, Thornhill. In 30 days, you'll be living in the mud with nothing. And I'll still have the boys." He mounted his horse. "Because the law is on my side. Judge Pritchard, Sheriff Reeves, every deed and document in this territory. You have nothing." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his hired men following. Snow kicked up behind them, swirling in the wind. Sheriff Reeves stayed behind. He wouldn't look at Marina. "I'm sorry," Marcus said finally. "I didn't know he'd bought your note." "If I had? Ain't your fault." The sheriff finally met her eyes. "You just lost your home for 2 little boys you barely know. And in 30 days, Vernon is still going to take them. What was the point?" Marina was quiet for a moment. Behind her, she heard small footsteps in the snow. Elijah and Jasper had come down from the porch. They stood on either side of her, not touching, but close. "Point is," Marina said slowly, "when they're older, they'll remember a woman who chose them. That's worth more than land." Marcus shook his head. "I hope you're right because you just bet everything on it." He rode away. Marina stood there watching him go. The cold bit through her coat. Her hands ached from gripping the rifle. And somewhere deep in her chest, something hurt worse than cold ever could. She'd just lost Samuel's dream. The only piece of him she had left. Elijah's small hand slipped into hers. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You shouldn't have. We're not worth." "Stop." Marina looked down at him, at Jasper beside him, both boys crying silently. "You're worth everything. Don't you ever think different?" But as she said it, she wondered if she'd just made the worst mistake of her life. In the distance, dark clouds gathered, another storm coming, and Father Tobias still wasn't back. By Monday, the whole town knew. Marina felt it the moment she rode into Clearwater Ridge with the boys. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Ice tracked them down the muddy street. Mrs. Chen pulled her daughters closer as they passed. Tom Blake, who'd always waved hello, turned his back and walked into the livery. Only Nora Patterson stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching. Marina tied her horse to the rail and helped Elijah and Jasper down from the wagon. The mud sucked at their boots. What little snow had fallen was already melting into brown slush. February thaw coming early. Inside the general store, 3 women clustered near the fabric bolts went silent. One of them, Margaret Foster, the mayor's wife, pursed her lips and walked past without speaking. "Don't mind them," Nora said from behind the counter, but her voice was tight. "They're just scared." "Scared of what?" Elijah asked quietly. "Of crossing Vernon Calloway." Nora closed her ledger with a sharp snap. "Your uncle holds mortgages on half the businesses in this town, including apparently this one." Marina's head came up. "Found out this morning." Nora wouldn't meet her eyes. "He bought the note from the bank Friday. Same day as yours. Sent his man around with a message. Anyone who helps you loses their credit. Anyone who shelters those boys loses their lease." The store suddenly felt smaller, colder. "I'm sorry," Marina said. "I didn't know he'd." "I knew." Nora finally looked at her. "I knew the minute I gave you credit for those coats. But Marina, I lost 2 babies, buried them before they took their first breath. I look at Elijah and Jasper, and I see," her voice broke. "I see what could have been. So Vernon can take his threats and choke on them." She pulled a canvas sack from under the counter. Flour, salt, dried beans, a slab of bacon wrapped in paper. "That's too much," Marina protested. "It's enough for a week, maybe 2 if you stretch it." Nora pushed the sack across the counter. "And before you argue, consider it a loan. You can pay me back when this is over. If it's ever over." "It will be." She glanced at the women still standing by the fabric bolts, pretending not to listen. "Now get out of here before Margaret runs to Vernon with a full report." Outside, The wind had picked up. The smell of rain hung heavy in the air. Not snow this time, but cold February rain, the kind that soaked through wool and turned roads to mud. Marina loaded the supplies into the wagon. Elijah and Jasper climbed up, silent. "Miss Thornhill." Jasper's voice was so quiet she almost missed it. "Are people mad at us?" "No, honey." Marina swung up onto the seat. "They're just scared. Fear makes people do things they ain't proud of." "Uncle Vernon makes everyone scared," Elijah said. "Even Papa was scared of him." Marina flicked the reins. The horse started forward, hooves squelching through the mud. They were almost out of town when Sarah Winters stepped into the street. The school teacher was small, no more than 5 feet tall, with graying brown hair pinned up tight. She'd taught in Clearwater Ridge for 15 years, buried a husband, and kept teaching. Everyone respected Sarah Winters. She walked right up to the wagon and looked at the twins. "You're the Washington boys." "Not a question. Your mother was Teresa Grace Washington. She volunteered at the school before you were born, read to the younger children." Jasper nodded slowly. "I remember her voice." Sarah reached into her apron and pulled out 2 small books, worn covers, pages dog-eared. "She'd want you to keep learning even now." She handed the books up. Elijah took them carefully like they might break. "Thank you," he whispered. Sarah nodded. Then she looked at Marina. "You're doing the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you different." She turned and walked back toward the schoolhouse. Behind her, Marina saw faces in windows watching, judging. But Sarah Winters had spoken, and in a town like Clearwater Ridge, that meant something. The ride home was quiet. Rain started halfway back, cold, steady, soaking everything. By the time they reached the ranch, Marina was shivering, and the boys looked half-drowned. Inside, she got the fire going while they changed into dry clothes. The sound of rain on the tin roof filled the silence, the smell of wet wood and smoke. "Miss Thornhill." Elijah stood in the doorway to the bedroom holding something. "We found this in the trunk. Is it okay if we look at it?" He held up a leather-bound book. Samuel's Bible. Marina's throat tightened. She hadn't opened that Bible in 5 years. Couldn't bear to see Samuel's handwriting in the margins, his careful notes about passages he loved. "Yeah," she managed. "It's okay." Elijah opened it carefully. A piece of fabric fell out, the scarf he'd been wearing the night she found them. The expensive one with silver thread. "That was in there?" Marina asked. "It was marking a page." Elijah picked up the scarf, fingers tracing the embroidered initials. T.W. Teresa Washington. That was Mama's name before she married Papa. He opened the Bible to the marked page. Inside, in careful handwriting. "To my sons, Elijah and Jasper. If you are reading this, I am with God, but I have made provisions for you. All documents are recorded at St. Benedict's Church, county seat, silver claim deed, partnership papers, my last will. Father Tobias Kane knows where to look. Trust him and know that I loved you with every breath. Your mother, March 1884. The room went dead quiet. "Silver claim deed," Marina said slowly. "Your father had a silver claim." "I don't know." Elijah's voice shook. "But Uncle Vernon and Papa used to fight about money, about a mine. Papa said Uncle wanted to change something, make it all his, but Papa wouldn't let him." Jasper looked up, eyes wide. "And then Papa died." The rain hammered harder against the roof. Lightning flickered outside, turning the world white for a moment. Marina stared at the note in Elijah's hand. Partnership papers. A mine worth enough to kill 4. And suddenly everything made terrible sense. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. Marina spent those days fixing what she could, mending fence posts, patching the barn roof where water leaked through. The boys stayed close, helping where they could. Elijah had a good hand with rope. Jasper was patient, holding board steady while she hammered. Nobody came to visit. The road turned to soup. Mud so deep a wagon would bog down halfway. But Marina knew it wasn't just the weather keeping folks away. On the fourth day, the rain broke. Pale sunlight filtered through grey clouds. The smell of wet earth was everywhere, thick and rich. Marina was in the barn, mucking stalls when she heard hoofbeats. She reached for the rifle, but stopped when she recognized the horse. Nora Patterson's bay mare, picking its way carefully through the mud. Nora dismounted, boots squelching. Her dress was mud splattered to the knee. She carried a leather satchel under one arm. Nora. Marina set down the pitchfork. You shouldn't be here. If Vernon finds out. Let him. She pushed past her into the barn out of the drizzle that had started again. I found something. Something you need to see. She opened the satchel and pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. An invoice. Corners torn. Ink faded, but still legible. Found it in my old ledgers from 1887. Your turn. She handed it to her. Look at the buyer's name. Marina tilted the paper toward the light coming through the barn door. Invoice, mining equipment, rope, timber supports. Total $240. Purchased by Isaac Washington and Vernon Calloway, partners. Silver claim registered as Washington Calloway Mine. Section 14, Range 6. Partners, Marina said slowly. The boy's father and Vernon were partners in a silver mine. Were. Nora pointed to a note scrawled at the bottom in different handwriting. See that? Added 3 weeks later. Full payment received. Buyer amended to V. Calloway only. Partnership dissolved per IW request. Isaac Washington wanted out. Looks like it. Nora's jaw was tight. And 2 weeks after that notation, Isaac Washington fell off a cliff. Died instantly, they said. No witnesses. The rain pattered on the roof. Somewhere outside a cow lowed mournfully. How much is the claim worth? Marina asked. I don't know, but if Vernon was willing to murder his partner for it. Nora didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. The barn door creaked open. Elijah and Jasper stood there, soaked from the drizzle, eyes wide. Uncle killed Papa for money. Elijah's voice cracked. For a mine? Marina moved toward them, but Elijah stepped back, shaking his head. No, I want to know. I want to know why Papa died. He looked at Nora. How much money? How much was he worth? Nora hesitated. Then if it's producing silver, could be anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000, maybe more. Jasper made a small sound. Elijah's hands clenched into fists. He killed Papa for money, Elijah whispered. And now he wants us gone so nobody can ask questions so he can keep it all. That's my guess, Nora said quietly. Hoof bits again. Multiple horses this time, moving fast despite the mud. Marina grabbed the rifle and stepped outside. Elijah and Jasper pressed against her, one on each side. Father Tobias rode into the yard, his black coat streaming water. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, a wagon rattled through the mud, driven by a thin man in spectacles. Tobias dismounted, nearly slipping in the muck. His face was gray with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright. Found it, he said, breathless. Found everything. The thin man climbed down from the wagon, clutching a leather case to his chest. He was young, maybe 30, with ink stains on his fingers. This is Daniel Pierce, Tobias said. County clerk. He's been keeping records at St. Benedict's for 8 years. Pierce nodded nervously. Father Tobias came to us 5 days ago, asking about Teresa Washington. I remember the name. She registered several documents with the church in March 1884, right before the twins were born. He opened the case carefully, protecting the contents from the drizzle. Pulled out 3 documents, each sealed with wax. Not red, but white church seals. Her last will and testament, Pierce said, holding up the first, naming Father Tobias Kane as executor and legal guardian of her sons in the event of her husband's death. Marina felt her heart kick against her ribs. The partnership agreement for the Washington Callaway mine, Pierce continued, showing the second document, filed jointly by Isaac Washington and Vernon Callaway in 1885. The claim was assessed last year at $40,000. Elijah grabbed Marina's arm. $40,000, he breathed. And this, Pierce held up the third document, an amendment to the partnership filed by Isaac Washington alone in August 1887. It states that in the event of his death, his 50% share of the mine transfers to his sons Elijah and Jasper Washington, held in trust until their 18th birthday. Silence. Just the sound of rain and breathing. He changed it, Marina said slowly. Isaac changed the partnership so his sons would inherit and Vernon found out. And killed him, Nora finished. Because if the boys inherit, Vernon loses $20,000. Tobias crossed himself. That's why he wants them on the orphan train. Once they're gone, scattered to who knows where, the claim defaults to the surviving partner. Him. But we have proof now, Pierce said. The will is legal. The amendment is legal. Judge Pritchard can't ignore this. Marina looked at the documents, then at Elijah and Jasper. Both boys were staring at the papers like they held the answers to everything. Can he? Jasper asked quietly. Can the judge ignore it? Tobias's face darkened. If Vernon gets to him first, he'll try. As if summoned by his name, a rider appeared at the edge of the property. One of Vernon's hired men, sitting motionless in the rain, watching. The man turned his horse and rode away slowly, deliberately. He knows, Nora whispered. Vernon knows we found something. Tobias's hand went to the cross around his neck. Then we need to move fast because he won't let us reach a courtroom with this evidence. In the distance, thunder rumbled. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. They didn't have long to wait. That night, Marina woke to the sound of horses. Not on the road, closer, circling the house. She grabbed the rifle and moved to the window. In the darkness, she could make out shapes. 4, maybe 5 riders. No lanterns, just shadows moving through the mud. Elijah, Jasper, she kept her voice low. Get dressed. Stay quiet. The boys were already awake, sitting up in their bed. Elijah's eyes were wide, but he didn't cry out, just nodded and reached for his boots. A torch flared in the darkness, then another. Marina's blood turned to ice. The barn, she whispered. They're going for the barn. She ran for the door, but she was too late. The first torch arced through the air, trailing sparks. It hit the barn roof and caught, dry hay inside, timber supports. Within seconds, flames crawled up the walls. The second torch followed, then a third. Marina burst out onto the porch, rifle raised. Get off my land! The riders wheeled away, disappearing into the darkness. But the damage was done. The barn was burning, flames reaching toward the sky, lighting up the night. The smell of burning wood and hay choked the air. The cattle! Elijah ran past her, heading for the corral. No. Marina grabbed his arm. Too dangerous. But Jasper was already moving, throwing open the corral gate. The cattle scattered, bellowing, running from the heat. One stumbled in the mud and went down hard. Marina ran for it, Elijah on her heels. Together, they hauled the animal up, slapping its hindquarters until it lurched away from the flames. By the time they got back to the house, half the town had arrived. Tom Blake with his wagon, Sarah Winters with buckets, even Sheriff Reeves, face grim in the firelight. Bucket line, Marcus shouted. Before it spreads to the house. They worked through the night, passing buckets of water from the well, throwing them on the barn, on the sparks that drifted toward the house. The mud made everything harder. People slipped, buckets spilled, but they kept going. Nora appeared beside Marina, face streaked with soot. Vernon did this. You know he did. Can't prove it. Don't need to prove it. Everyone knows. She threw another bucket. Water hissing against burning wood. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Marina didn't answer. She just kept throwing water. By dawn, the barn was gone. Nothing left but smoking timbers and a stone foundation. The house had survived, but just barely. Scorch marks blackened the east wall. The crowd began to disperse. Some offered quiet words of sympathy, others just left, avoiding her eyes. Sheriff Reeves stayed behind. I'll ask around, Marcus said. See if anyone saw who did this. But Marina, I got to be honest. Even if we find them, Vernon will have an alibi. He always does. I know. Marcus looked at the ruins of the barn, then back at Marina. You're running out of time. 23 days until foreclosure. No barn, half your fencing burned. How are you going to make it? Marina didn't have an answer. After Marcus left, Marina sat on the porch steps with her head in her hands. The smell of smoke clung to everything. Her eyes burned, her lungs ached. Elijah and Jasper came and sat beside her. Neither spoke. They just sat there in the grey morning light, watching the smoke rise. I'm sorry, Elijah finally whispered. This is our fault. We should leave. Go with Uncle Vernon. Then he'll stop hurting you. No. Marina's voice was rough. That's what he wants, for you to feel guilty, to give up. But you're losing everything because of us. Marina looked at him, at Jasper beside him. Both boys exhausted, covered in soot, eyes red from smoke and tears. I already lost everything once, she said quietly. 5 years ago, when my husband and daughter died. This land, this barn, it's just wood and dirt. But you too. She shook her head. You're alive. You're here. That's worth more than any barn. Jasper leaned against her shoulder. What do we do now? Before Marina could answer, another horse came up the road. Father Tobias, riding hard. He dismounted before the horse had fully stopped. His face was ashen. The county clerk's office, Tobias said, breathless. It burned last night, same time as your barn. The world seemed to tilt. The documents? Marina asked, though she already knew. Gone. All of them. The will, the partnership papers, the amendment, everything. Tobias sank onto the steps beside them. Daniel Pierce barely got out alive. He's saying it was an accident. A lamp knocked over. But Marina, there were 2 fires. Yours and his. Same night. That's not coincidence. Vernon covered his tracks, Nora said from the doorway. She'd stayed behind, helping to clean up. He knew we found the evidence, so he destroyed it. We still have our testimony, Tobias protested. Pierce saw the documents. I saw them. We can testify in court against Judge Pritchard's original ruling. Nora shook her head. It'll be our word against Vernon's lawyers, and we have no proof. Silence settled over them, heavy as smoke. So that's it? Elijah's voice was small. Uncle wins? Tobias closed his eyes. I don't know, child. I don't know. Marina stared at the burned barn, at the scorched earth, at everything Vernon Calloway had taken from her in the span of one night, and she felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, changing, hardening. She stood up slowly. Nora, you still have that invoice, the one showing Isaac Washington bought mining equipment with Vernon? Yes. Why? Because that proves partnership. It's not much, but it's something. She looked at Tobias. And you baptized Teresa Washington. You have those records at the church? Yes. Baptismal records going back 20 years. Good. Marina's jaw set. Then we take what we have and we fight in court in front of everyone. We make Vernon answer for what he's done. Marina, Sheriff Reeves had returned, standing at the edge of the property. I just got word Judge Pritchard is holding a hearing tomorrow. Vernon filed a petition for immediate custody. Says you're unfit. Can't even protect your own property. He held up a paper. Red wax seal. If you don't show up with a defense, he gets the boys. Final ruling. Elijah grabbed Marina's hand. Jasper grabbed the other. And in that moment, standing in the ashes of everything she'd built, Marina knew there was only one choice left. Then we show up, she said. And we tell the truth. The courthouse steps were packed by the time they arrived. Half the town had turned out, some curious, some hostile, most just wanting to see how it would end. Marina helped Elijah and Jasper down from the wagon, their hands cold in hers. They wore the wool coats Nora had given them, hair cut neatly. They looked smaller than ever. Vernon Calloway waited at the top of the steps, flanked by two lawyers in expensive suits. He smiled when he saw them coming. Thornhill. His voice carried across the crowd. Glad you could make it. I was worried you might not show. Marina didn't respond. Just walked past him. The boys pressed close to her sides. Inside, the courtroom smelled of old wood and lamp oil. Judge Pritchard sat behind the bench, grey-haired and stern-faced. He'd been on the bench for 20 years. Knew every family, every secret, every debt in Clearwater Ridge. And Vernon Calloway had been his poker partner for 10 of those years. All rise, the bailiff called. The room shuffled to its feet. Marina could feel eyes on her, on the boys. Whispers ran through the gallery like wind through dry grass. Judge Pritchard banged his gavel. Be seated. We're here to settle the matter of guardianship for Elijah and Jasper Washington, orphan children of Isaac and Teresa Washington. He looked at Marina over his spectacles. Miss Thornhill, you've been housing these children without legal authority for 3 weeks. Mr. Calloway, as their blood uncle, has petitioned for immediate custody. Do you have any reason why I should deny his petition? Marina stood. Her hands were steady, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Yes, Your Honor. Several reasons. Then present them. Father Tobias rose from the front bench. Your Honor, I'm Father Tobias Kane. I've served this territory for 15 years. I baptized Teresa Washington in 1879 and I was present when she registered her last will and testament with St. Benedict's Church in 1884. Was present. Judge Pritchard leaned forward. Where is this will now? Destroyed, Your Honor. The county clerk's office burned 3 nights ago. All records were lost. A murmur ran through the crowd. Vernon's smile never wavered. If there's no will, Judge Pritchard said, then I have only Mr. Calloway's guardianship papers which are legal and binding. But Your Honor, Tobias started. Father, I respect you, but I can't rule on a document that no longer exists. Not when Mr. Calloway has a signed decree. The judge looked at Marina. Is that all you have? Marina's throat tightened. She'd known it would come to this, known that without the documents, they had nothing but words. But then Nora Patterson stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, I have this. She walked forward, holding the yellowed invoice. It's a receipt from my store dated June 1887. It shows Isaac Washington and Vernon Calloway as equal partners in a silver mine. The Washington Calloway Mine, Section 14, Range 6. She laid the paper on the judge's bench. Pritchard studied it. A partnership? So. 3 weeks after this purchase, Isaac Washington filed an amendment with the county, an amendment stating his share would go to his sons if he died. Nora's voice rang clear. 2 weeks after that, Isaac Washington fell off a cliff and Vernon claimed full ownership of a mine worth $40,000. The courtroom erupted, voices overlapping, people standing, the bailiff shouting for order. Vernon was on his feet. Your Honor, this is slander. My brother-in-law's death was a tragic accident. There's no evidence of. Sit down, Mr. Calloway. Judge Pritchard's voice cracked like a whip. He studied the invoice, then looked at Nora. Do you have proof of this amendment? It was destroyed in the fire, Your Honor, along with everything else. Then I can't. I can prove it, Jasper said. His voice was small, but in the sudden silence, it carried. Everyone turned to look at him, the 8-year-old boy standing beside Marina's chair, hands clasped in front of him. Judge Pritchard's eyebrows rose. Child, this is not. Please, Your Honor. Jasper walked forward. Elijah grabbed for him, but Jasper kept going all the way to the bench. I can prove Uncle Vernon killed my father. Vernon's face went white. Your Honor, the boy is confused. Grief does terrible things too. Let him speak. The judge waved him silent. He looked at Jasper. What proof do you have, child? Jasper reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded handkerchief. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a button, brass, stamped with initials. This was Papa's, he said quietly. From his coat. The coat he was wearing when he died. He held it up. But I found this in Uncle Vernon's desk drawer 2 weeks after Papa died. Papa's coat was never found. They said it went over the cliff with him. The courtroom was dead silent. That's ridiculous, Vernon said. But his voice had changed. Higher, strained. It's just a button. Could be anyone's. It has Papa's initials, Jasper said. I.W. Isaac Elias Washington, and there's blood on it. He turned the button over. Dark stains marked the brass. Judge Pritchard took the button carefully, studied it, then he looked at Vernon. Mr. Calloway, do you have an explanation for how your dead brother-in-law's button ended up in your possession? Vernon's mouth opened, closed. His face had gone from white to red. It must have been from before, from when he visited. With blood on it. The judge's voice was cold. Sheriff Reeves stood up in the back. Your Honor, I'd like to present one more piece of evidence. He walked forward and laid a document on the bench. This is Isaac Washington's death certificate filed the day after he died, signed by Doc Harrison as cause of death. But look at the witness signature. Judge Pritchard looked. His face went pale. Vernon Calloway, the judge read slowly. You witnessed his death. I happened to be nearby. I heard the fall. You told the guardianship court you weren't there, Sheriff Reeves said flatly. You said you learned about his death hours later. That's what you testified under oath. I misspoke. I was confused. And this seal. The sheriff pointed to the red wax at the bottom of the death certificate. That's your seal, isn't it? The same one you use on all your bank documents. Vernon stared at the certificate. At the seal he'd pressed into the wax himself. And in that moment, everyone in the courtroom saw it. The guilt, the fear, the calculation of a man realizing his carefully built lies were crumbling. You were there, Elijah said, standing now. His voice shook, but he kept going. You pushed him and then you made it look like an accident. That's absurd. Vernon turned to Judge Pritchard. Your Honor, these are desperate accusations from desperate people. There's no proof. There's enough. Judge Pritchard's voice was ice. There's testimony. There's a button from a dead man's coat in your possession. There's a partnership dissolved under suspicious circumstances. And there's your own signature on a death certificate contradicting your sworn testimony. He banged his gavel once. Sheriff Reeves, arrest Vernon Calloway on suspicion of fraud, perjury, and murder. Hold him for trial. The courtroom exploded. Vernon lunged for the door, but Reeves was already moving. He grabbed Vernon's arm and yanked it behind his back. The banker struggled, but the sheriff was stronger. You can't do this, Vernon shouted. I have rights. I have lawyers. You have the right to stay silent, Reeves said grimly. I suggest you use it. As they dragged Vernon away, still shouting, Jasper ran to Marina. He buried his face in her shirt, shoulders shaking. Elijah followed, wrapping his arms around both of them. Judge Pritchard cleared his throat. Miss Thornhill, given the circumstances and pending investigation into Mr. Calloway's actions, I'm granting you temporary guardianship of Elijah and Jasper Washington. We'll make it permanent once this matter is fully resolved. He banged his gavel again. Court adjourned. The sound echoed through the courthouse like thunder. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the clouds. Spring came slowly to Wyoming territory. The mud dried first, turning from soup to hard-packed earth. Then the grass, pushing up in green shoots between the scorched timbers where the barn had stood. By late April, wildflowers dotted the fields. Indian paintbrush and lupine bright against the brown. Marina stood in the yard, watching Elijah and Jasper walk the fence line. They moved with purpose now, checking posts, calling out when they found one that needed mending. Ranch work, the kind of work that made a person belong to a place. Behind her, the sound of hammers. Tom Blake and a dozen other men from town raising the frame of a new barn. They'd shown up 3 days ago without asking, just brought timber and nails and got to work. Least we can do, Tom said, not meeting Marina's eyes. After everything. Nora appeared beside her, wiping her hands on her apron. She'd been inside making lunch for the work crew. Bread and stew, the smell drifting through the open windows. Judge Pritchard made it official this morning, she said quietly. Full guardianship, permanent. Elijah and Jasper are yours. Marina felt something loosen in her chest, something she'd been holding tight for 2 months. And Vernon? Trial set for June. Sheriff found 3 witnesses who saw him on that cliff the day Isaac died, and the assayer confirmed the mine's worth $42,000. Nora's jaw tightened. He killed a man for money. He'll hang for it. Marina didn't feel satisfaction, just a bone-deep weariness. The mine, she said. The boys inherit half of it. Other half goes to Isaac's estate, which means them anyway. Nora smiled slightly. Judge put it in trust until they're 18, but he's releasing $10,000 now for ranch improvements and their education. You'll be able to pay off the mortgage, fix this place up proper. It's their money. It's their future. And you're part of that now. Nora squeezed Marina's arm. They're lucky to have you. She wasn't sure about that, but she knew she was lucky to have them. The boys came running across the field, boots kicking up dust. Jasper reached her first, breathless. Mama Marina. He'd started calling her that 2 weeks ago. It still made her throat tight every time. The fence by the creek, there's a calf stuck in the mud. We need help. Show me. She grabbed a rope from the porch and followed them. Mama Marina. Not just Miss Thornhill anymore. Mama. Samuel would have liked that. That evening, after the work crew had gone home and the sun was setting orange and gold over the mountains, Marina walked to the small grove behind the house. 2 graves rested there under the oak tree. Samuel's marker carved with his name and dates. Beside it, a smaller stone, too small, the baby who'd lived 6 hours and then slipped away. Marina knelt between them. The grass was green here, soft. I know I haven't been around much, she said quietly. Been angry, I guess. At you for leaving, at God for taking you, at myself for not saving you. The wind sighed through the oak leaves. But I got something to tell you. She ran her hand over Samuel's marker. There's 2 boys living in our house now, Elijah and Jasper, 8 years old. They lost their mama, too, and their papa. They were alone and scared and hungry. I couldn't save you, Samuel. Couldn't save our little girl, but I saved them. And maybe, she stopped, swallowing hard, maybe that's what you'd want, for all this grief to mean something. For it to make room for more love instead of just more emptiness. She stood slowly, knees aching from the cold ground. I'm not forgetting you, either of you, but I'm living again. And I think, I hope that's okay. No answer came, just the wind and the evening bird singing. But when Marina walked back to the house, she felt lighter than she had in 5 years. Inside, Elijah was setting the table. Jasper was reading aloud from one of the books Sarah Winters had given them, stumbling over the bigger words but determined. They looked up when she came in. "Mama Marina," Elijah said, "tomorrow's May 1st. Jasper and I were thinking maybe we should do the ice breaking even though it's not frozen anymore. Just as a habit." Marina smiled. "Ice doesn't break itself. You got to show up every day." "That's what you always say," Jasper said, grinning. "Because it's true." She hung her hat on the peg by the door. "And yeah, tomorrow morning, first thing, all 3 of us." After supper, after dishes were washed and the fire banked for the night, they sat together on the porch. The stars were coming out, bright and sharp in the clear spring air. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Elijah leaned against Marina's shoulder. Jasper had his head in her lap, half asleep. "Mama Marina," Elijah's voice was soft, "do you think Mama and Papa are watching us from heaven?" "I reckon so." "Do you think they're happy that we're here with you?" Marina looked up at the stars, at the vast Wyoming sky, dark and endless and full of light. "Yeah, honey, I think they're happy." Jasper's breathing had evened out, asleep. Elijah wasn't far behind. Marina sat there with both boys drowsing against her, listening to the night sounds, the creek running nearby, the horses shifting in the corral, the wind through new grass. 5 years ago, she'd lost everything. But sitting here now with 2 small bodies warm and safe beside her, Marina realized something. She'd found everything, too, just in a different shape than she'd expected. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of spring flowers and rain still weeks away. Tomorrow they'd break ice that wasn't there. Just to remember, just to show up, because that's what family does. In the years to come, those in Clearwater Ridge would ask, what made a woman risk everything for 2 boys she barely knew? The answer wasn't complicated, only hard. Marina Thornhill had lost a husband and a baby 5 years before those brothers stumbled into her barn. Now, she'd saved 2 more, and in doing so, she saved herself, and found a new kind of family the Wyoming wind could never take away. She thought her heart was dead as winter ground. Thought the best thing she could do was keep her head down, work her land, and wait for her own time to come. But grief doesn't kill you. It just makes room. Room for more love if you're brave enough to let it in. Room for more family, even when it doesn't look like the family you planned. Ice doesn't break itself. You got to show up every day, no matter how cold it gets. That's what she taught those boys, and maybe that's what they taught her right back. As for Vernon Calloway, well, he hanged that June. Judge said a man who'd kill for money wasn't fit to walk among decent folks. The mine went to Elijah and Jasper, held in trust like it should have been all along. They used some of that money to build the finest barn in 3 counties. Rest went into the bank for their futures. Elijah became a teacher like Sarah Winters. Jasper married a rancher 2 valleys over, raised for children who all learned to break ice before they could write their names. And Marina Thornhill? She lived to see grandchildren, lived to see that ranch bloom into something Samuel would have been proud of. Lived to die in her own bed at 73, surrounded by people who loved her. They buried her next to Samuel and the baby under that old oak tree. And on her marker, Elijah and Jasper carved 6 words that said everything. She showed up every single day. Some folks say blood makes family. I reckon blood just makes kin. Family is who you'd walk through a blizzard for, who you'd lose everything to protect, who you'd break ice with every morning just because it matters. That's the truth of it. And the truth doesn't need dressing up.